Welcome to Betting with the Bag. It is Thursday, November 14th. I'm Ian Cameron filling in for Jimmy on this Thursday. Great to be with you and great to be with the low baggers in the chat as they file in for a Thursday morning show where we have not one, not two, not three, not even four. How about 5 sports to break down tonight? It is a busy Thursday. NFL in action, Steelers, Browns, big AFC North division battle. We've got college football, 2 games, a MAC game and an ACC ESPN national TV game. We'll get to that. We've got an NBA slate with, I believe, 6 games on the card. We've got college basketball, not nearly the same big size college basketball card as we had yesterday or in the past couple days, but still some games to look at. We'll break those down. And of course, NHL. We've got 8 games on the ice to get to as well. Let's say hello to everyone. Matt Randall, who continues to roll with the Taint plays. Welcome in. Jerry Beatty, Vegas Gun, Walla Walla Dose, Joe Anisi, going to Barry McCockiner, I think if I'm saying that right, Reese, Nilo, Avatas, Carlos, welcome all of you. Jay Stone saying, thanks, Jimmy, for keeping me off that Capitals over. I got to give Jimmy credit for that. He was the brave soul that took a Capitals game under, and it was the first Capitals game to stay under. Well, actually only the second Washington Capitals game to stay under the total in their last 14 games. They're now 12-2 to the over their last 14. 12-1 they were to the over in their last 13 games going into last night. But certainly good call by Jimmy the Bag with the under last night. And obviously didn't have to sweat that one out one bit. 2-1 win in a shootout for the Washington Capitals last night over the Philadelphia Flyers. So welcome in everybody in the chat. Good to have you with us and good to be breaking down this Thursday card. As just like last week, Jimmy will be back for the late show. He'll be here at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. Maxwell Smart is pretty much his guest every late show, just solely on college basketball. So that's still on tap for later today. Let's get right to it. And of course, Teddy Covers will be joining me at 11:50 a.m. Eastern time, joining the show at that time as he does each and every morning right here on Betting with the Bag. So we look forward to talking to Teddy later. But let's get right to it. We'll start with Thursday night NFL football. AFC North battle here. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Cleveland Browns. We've got Cleveland right now laying 3 at pretty much even money in most spots. Again, SBRodds.com. Make sure you're using that resource and that tool each day for the best line and price available with all of your bets. It's got matchup pages, gives you weather updates for the games, what network the game is going to be on television-wise. So gives you all of that info right there at SBRodds.com. That's why you want to be using that. Total 41.5 in this game. And I will tell you right now that I've got a uneasy feeling about this game because, you know, if you want to back Pittsburgh, it's a road team traveling on a short week. You know, it's a team that, you know, is going to have to show that in a loud environment, in a what should be a pretty, you know, crazy environment in Cleveland. I know Cleveland's disappointed this year, but you would think the Browns faithful are still going to turn out for a division home game on national TV on Fox on a Thursday night. You know, can this offense and can Mason Rudolph handle those dynamics? You know, that's going to be the big question going into this football game tonight. And I know there's issues. You know, can you trust Pittsburgh, you know, going on the road in a price range where they got to win the game in order to cover this number? But I've got even more questions, and I've got even more worries, and I've got even more concerns with the Cleveland Browns. And I am not one bit sold yet on Cleveland suddenly getting a win against Buffalo. And believe me, that was Buffalo losing that game every bit as much, if not more, than the Cleveland Browns winning that game on Sunday, as far as I'm concerned. The Browns were fortunate to get out of there with the win. You know, they took advantage of some Buffalo miscues, penalties, turnovers. I still didn't see a lot I liked with Cleveland, especially offensively. The red zone continues to be a huge problem for this team. Huge problem. They don't execute well in the red zone. We see drop passes in the red zone. We see bad offensive line play. In fact, spotty offensive line play has been the theme of the season pretty much for the Cleveland Browns. Like, this is an offensive line that's disappointed. You're seeing Baker Mayfield getting snowed under on a routine basis. That's a concern for me as well. And you see just inane, inept, horrendous play calling in the red zone by our good pal Freddie Kitchens here. who continues to show that he is totally ill-prepared to be an NFL football head coach. He probably never should have gotten the job in the first place. This play calling in the red zone is laughable. Laughable. You know what? And it brings me a sense of comic relief every week when I'm seeing Cleveland run these most, pedestrian, obvious plays inside the 5-yard line that have absolutely no shot. None. Zero. And they have no shot because there's no ingenuity to them. There's no, creativity. There's no deception. What about a bootleg for the quarterback? Why do you got to run up the gut all the time inside the 5-yard line? How about a bootleg with an athletic quarterback or a rollout? How about a fake? Fake the handoff, let the quarterback sneak it in, take it in himself. Where is these play calls that are a little bit more thinking outside the box? We don't see them from this Cleveland team, plain and simple. We just don't. And that continues to be an issue for the Cleveland Browns moving forward. So I think they won that game against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday in spite of themselves. They're hoping that they're trying to say the right things. Like if you read the Cleveland Brown player quotes and the coaches quotes saying, we can make a run. We think we're good. We think we've got talent. We've struggled. We haven't played well, but we think even though at 3-6 right now, we can get hot and go on a run. That's potentially the case, but talent-wise, they have the talent to reel off maybe a winning streak. But I still see the same issues plaguing them: bad red zone offense, bad play calling, penalties, turnovers. All of it is really added up in terms of costing the Cleveland Browns any realistic chance, at least, of making the playoffs here in this one. I'm looking at Pittsburgh here. All right, +3. I probably don't bet this game unless I get a 3. I've now got a 3. And that's the side I'm going to look at here, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I definitely would look under the total as well. I think we need to realize, guys, this Pittsburgh defense is pretty good right now. Like, if you watch that game against the LA Rams, they were in Jared Goff's face all day long. They blew up the line of scrimmage. The Rams' offensive line had no answer. They couldn't block Pittsburgh's defensive front. That's a problem for me potentially for Cleveland tonight because I've not been sold on what I've seen from their offensive line. And how about the difference Minkah Fitzpatrick's made to this Steeler defense? How good has this guy played? How good has he played since Pittsburgh, since they got him in that trade with Miami? He's been outstanding. Seems like every game he's either intercepting a pass or scoring a defensive touchdown. That is the kind of impact he's had here for this Steelers defense, and they've played great football on the defensive side ever since they got him. He's been excellent. And you talk about Baker Mayfield, who sometimes has the propensity to force the football into coverage. Yeah, that would be a matchup that Minkah Fitzpatrick might be able to take advantage of. So, him having another interception tonight definitely, to me, is a situation where it wouldn't shock me to see Minkah Fitzpatrick again make another big play against a quarterback that can sometimes be forcing it into coverage, sometimes be looking to do a little bit too much. That's definitely something that wouldn't surprise me one bit tonight. See Fitzpatrick maybe have another big impact for that Steelers defense. But I like their defensive front. The front seven for the Steelers has been really good. Their linebacking play has been solid. Bud Dupree's had a really nice few games in a row for them. Again, the secondary with Fitzpatrick's being there has been bolstered a little bit. I know there was concern about Joe Hayden's health coming into this game, the cornerback for the Steelers, and of course would be playing his former team here, the Cleveland Browns, if he does suit up. So that's definitely an injury. I'm going to try to get an update on that right now as we speak. Just bring up the injury report here. But bottom line is Pittsburgh and under for me in this game. I have a real leery feeling about betting unders. You know that. I don't do well with them. But if I were to bet this game from a totals perspective, and it is a low number, 41.5, I could see the defenses having the better. Cleveland did play very good defensively last week against Buffalo. And I know Buffalo's got offensive issues. That's not a Buffalo team loaded with wide receivers. That's not a Buffalo team with a great offensive line. And Josh Allen, we know, is still a quarterback that is in the developmental stage of his NFL career. I don't think he's at the point right now where he's ready to carry a team through the passing game just yet. I think that's very clear from what we've seen from Josh Allen so far this season. So I give Cleveland some credit for that. I do think Mason Rudolph and the Steelers offense is going to be a little bit more of a tougher test for him. Now, I know Mason Rudolph is, still trying to learn, being how to be a starting quarterback, but, I think he's he's managed the games well. Let's put it that way. I hate to use the game manager term, but we'll definitely see if he can go into this road environment here, not make mistakes. He's been pretty good for the most part at doing that, not making mistakes. We'll see if he can. Good news for the Steelers on the injury front. Joe Hayden is still questionable, but looks like Ramon Foster on the Steelers offensive line. He's been upgraded to probable, and he's obviously one of the really good players on that O-line. And James Conner upgraded to probable running back for the Steelers as well. Those are some of the key injuries for the Pittsburgh side. For the Cleveland side, no Olivier Vernon again, out of this game at the defensive end position due to injury. So that's unfortunate for them. Really, that's the big injury for them is Olivier Vernon. I mean, they've been banged up in the secondary most of the season, but it looks like Randall and Williams are both going to suit up in that Cleveland secondary tonight. So that's definitely a good sign for Cleveland in this game. Like I say, I think I would lean under the total. I will have a half unit bet. Again, half unit for me on Pittsburgh +3. I believe in what Pittsburgh's doing right now. Like, they beat Indianapolis. You could say they were very lucky to win that game, but they beat a good Indianapolis team. The LA Rams are clearly not what they were last year, but that's still a win against at least a good team, the LA Rams. I don't think the LA Rams are an elite or great team anymore. I think that's become clear. Is because Jared Goff's regressed. The offensive line is nowhere near what it was last year. I'm stunned how much the Rams' offensive line has declined from last year to this year. They can't open up holes for Gurley. The Jared Goff's not getting time at all. Step up in the pocket and throw downfield. It just continues to be a big problem. And Pittsburgh took advantage of that. And to be honest with you, it's not like Cleveland's offensive line is all that great. So that's why I think this Pittsburgh defense is going to be able to play well tonight. The question is Pittsburgh's offense going to play well? That's the biggest question. Can the Steelers do enough offensively to pull out a win here in Cleveland? I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a battle. I don't think Pittsburgh's winning this game easily. Jansen in the chat asking me, do you see this game as a running game? Pittsburgh's been pretty good against the run lately too. So I think Cleveland would prefer to get Nick Chubb going. They really have committed to it the last few weeks. You can tell. Trying to run the football a bit more. And obviously, if you think they're going to, and Pittsburgh's certainly going to run the football. There's no question. They've been running the football a lot. They've been trying to keep Mason Rudolph in shorter down and distance situations. So I do think Pittsburgh's going to run the football. Question is, what's Cleveland going to do? Because, for most of the season, Freddie Kitchens was a pass-happy bastard. And he's letting Baker Mayfield throw on like 3 out of 4 plays on every, 4-down series. And that's not really what you should be doing when you have a quality running back like Nick Chubb. And finally, we're starting to see Cleveland run the football a bit more. So I do think if the last couple of games holds true to form for the Cleveland Browns, I do think they'll run the football a good amount. They were passing the ball a lot, way too much, in my opinion, early in the season, but they look like they're finally starting to run the football. So I lean under, but again, my track record with unders is terrible, so I really try to avoid those kind of bets like the plague. But I would lean in that direction totals-wise, and I like Pittsburgh here. Again, a half-unit bet. I'm a very simple person to figure out when it comes to my bets. Half unit and 1 unit. That's it. None of this 5-unit, 10-unit crap. I either like it fully, I'll go 1 unit. If I like it enough to bet it, but not quite as strong, I'll go half unit. Very simple betting unit structure for me. It's worked for me for years. That's the way we do things. And for me, half unit on Pittsburgh +3. I don't love Pittsburgh, but at +3, I like them enough, and I think they can pull out the win because I'm just not sold yet on Cleveland being this big, let's turn our season around because we beat the Buffalo Bills who shot themselves in the foot repeatedly on Sunday. I'm going to have to see the Browns do it again tonight in this game against Pittsburgh before I'm convinced that, hey, maybe the Browns can go on a little run. All right, let's see what the chat's saying. Appreciate the kind words. I appreciated, Angus, the kind words. Really, I do. Thank you, guys. I mean, we're just trying to keep the seat warm for Jimmy, giving you good info. Eddie Euler. Yeah, we'll get to hockey in a bit. Hurricanes line dropped to -127, but they've beaten the Sabres 9 straight times. Yeah, they have, and I don't know what we're going to get from Buffalo tonight. Like, this is the first game. We'll get to that later. It's their first game back from Sweden after playing Tampa Bay there twice. So, and same with the Lightning. How sharp are they going to be? First game back in North America after the trip to Sweden to play those 2 games there against the Sabres. So, definitely It's a situation where in those two hockey games, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them other than just sit back, watch, observe, maybe bet something live in game, see what happens there. Mitchell saying good money management is key to staying in the game long term. Good advice. It is, absolutely is, because there's too many bounces of the ball or the puck, and there's too many questionable calls from referees and officials in games to just unload on any one play or one side or one total. I really believe that. I honestly do. You could love a game a ton and say, oh, I love this play. I love this side. But you just never know what could creep up during the course of the game. A bad bounce, a bad call, an injury or two. And all of a sudden, that play you loved is going down the drain. And you've put way too much money on it than you probably should have. You're not going to be able to get that money back. So again, that's why I stress, even though if I love a play and it's still one unit. I think once or twice in my entire handicapping career, which is now going on 9-10 years. That's unbelievable. That's why I'm starting to show gray hairs. Here we go. Can we see that there? See those grays there? They're starting to show up a little bit on the side. That's why they're showing up, because I've been doing this kind of thing for 10 years and stressing and bad beats and down to the wire finishes, and it's added up over the years on my heart rate too, actually, to be honest with you. But that's why, because you could love a play so much and it could just suddenly be changed in an instant because of so many different factors. And that's why I say, even if you do love a particular game or a particular side or a particular total, there's not necessarily you shouldn't necessarily dive in and just go nuts on it by any stretch of the imagination. So before we move to college football, let's see what the chat's saying. Noli knows like Siena. I like Siena too. We'll get to college basketball too. Siena's off a big win against St. Bonnie. It was a really good win. Siena obviously lost Jamie on Christian to the George Washington team. He's now coaching there. No question about that. But Siena, that was a good win. My one concern is that was that Franciscan Cup or whatever they call that. Siena St. Bonaventure is one of those every single year they play each other. They're those Buffalo, Western New York schools, that are close together. Nice little rivalries they have. When Siena plays St. Bonaventure, Siena plays Niagara, Niagara plays Siena, Niagara plays Canisius. I mean, you go on all those Western New York, Buffalo area college basketball schools. When they play each other, those are fierce games. Those are games where there's focus, there's motivation. I worry there's a slight letdown tonight for Siena coming off a win like that, but I certainly lean to them plus the points. You're right, Jerry. Key injury for Havid in this game tonight. That's definitely something you got to pay attention to if you're going to bet this game. Siena has proven themselves from a point spread standpoint. Unfortunately, everybody's onto it right now because Siena, Havid, opened 12.5 here. They're down to 9.5 in this game right now. So we've seen a 3-point move toward Siena. Definitely a lot of people on the Saints here tonight against the Crimson in this non-conference matchup. We'll get to college basketball later, but again, I always like to start the show with football. I just wanted to touch on that because Siena was getting a lot of discussion in the chat. Let's go to college football now. We've got 2 games in college football action taking place tonight in the MAC. It's the Buffalo Bulls taking on the Kent State Golden Flashes. We've got Buffalo taking a lot of money here in this game. Buffalo Bulls open 3.5 as road favorites here in this game. The total stayed steady pretty much at 55.5 in this game. But Buffalo opened 3.5. It's all the way up to 6 now in terms of Buffalo laying it here on the road against Kent State. So we've seen a pretty sizable move toward the Bulls. And when you look at the Bulls, this is a team that coming into the season, I had my concerns with Lance Leipold's team. Lost a lot from last year. Would they be able to still do a pretty good job and be able to be a pretty solid team in the MAC? And they're playing their best football right now of the season, this Buffalo team. And they found their offense. They've scored 21, 43, 43 points in their last 3 games. Now, one of those was against Akron. So when anybody beats Akron, you don't deserve credit for it. You deserve absolutely no credit whatsoever for doing anything against the Akron Zips. That is a historically bad season that the Akron Zips have had. Think about this for a second. They're 0-10 straight up and against the spread. They haven't covered a point spread. It's November 14th, and the Akron Zips have not covered a point spread yet this year. That is shocking. That is just because usually when you go on a winless ATS streak of, let's say 5, 6, hell, even 7 games to begin the season, at some point, the bargain, there's going to be a bargain at some point. There's going to be value at some point in the point spread to back that team. There has to be. And yet Akron has still been just so bad and so inept on both sides of the football. They can't stop anybody on defense. They can barely score a touchdown. They can barely score a field goal in most games on offense. And unbelievably, they've gone this deep into the season without a single point spread cover this season. Hard to believe, but nevertheless, that was one of Buffalo's recent wins, but they did beat Central Michigan 43-20. They crushed Eastern Michigan on the road 43-14 last week. This is not a team I have any interest going against right now. Buffalo's playing good football. I would agree with this line move. I think if you got 3.5, you got a good number. 6, I think it's still a little playable on the Buffalo side. I'm not involved now at the current number. I missed the early number, and I'm not going to chase a bad number that's gone 2.5 points worse on me. But I don't want Kent State in this game. Kent State off, 3 straight losses. They lost at Ohio 45-38. They lost at home to Miami, Ohio 23-16. They lose at Toledo last week 35-33. That is the one concern, too, about now laying 6 on the road with Buffalo is that each of Kent State's last 3 losses have been by a touchdown or less. So it's not like Kent State's been horrible. It's not like Kent State's been non-competitive. But my concern with Kent State is, you look at them offensively. It's been hit or miss with this group on that side of the football. They do try to run a fast tempo. But, their offense has been spotty at times. It's been good at times. We're not necessarily sure what we're going to get from them on that side of the football. We have seen Buffalo play better defensively in recent weeks. So I would actually lean over now at 55.5 because I like Buffalo's been just piling up the points lately. They've figured it out on offense. You've seen each of the last 2 weeks, they've scored 43 points against Central Michigan and Eastern Michigan. I think if you can score into the 40s against them, you could get into the high 30s or 40s against Buffalo. Can Kent State get you 14, 17 points in this game? Put it over the total? I think it can. So I'm looking Buffalo. I missed the best number. All right, it was 3.5. It's 6 now. I don't want Kent State. I would lean Buffalo, but I'm not betting -6 when I could have had -3.5. And I am interested in this game over the total now, 55.5 on this Buffalo Kent State game. I do think we'll see some points. You look at these MAC games. You look at a lot of them this week. They've gone over the total in a lot of instances. Western Michigan, Ohio, even after a slow start, flew over the total. Northern Illinois, Toledo last night went over the total. Bowling Green barely stayed under the total against Miami, Ohio last night, but that's probably because Bowling Green's got one of the worst offenses in the MAC. I think Buffalo's offense is rolling right now. I think Kent State can at least put up some points. So I would lean Buffalo, but miss the best number. And I'm definitely interested over the total. I think I will have a bet on that. Buffalo, Kent State over 55.5 tonight. See what the chat's saying. Nope, taint play from Matt Randall. But that's why, and that's good, that Matt Randall is showing you exactly the way you need to be approaching your daily betting and your daily handicapping. You don't force a taint play if nothing is strong enough or there's no parameters that are strong enough to fit a taint play. So that's the way you do it. Ian, thanks for Ice Guys, by the way. It helps me immensely. Thank you for watching that. Definitely that's the way to do it. You don't put out strong plays or you don't make bigger bets unless you have strong conviction behind them. All right, next up in college football, really good game here, actually. This one that we're about to get to right now. It is North Carolina taking on Pittsburgh in college football action. ACC television game on the ACC, or not the ACC network, on ESPN, but it is an ACC game. We've got Pitt laying 4 in this game against North Kakalaki. Total in this game about 49.5, pretty much across the board in this one. I'm definitely looking at the North Carolina side in this game here, +4 against Pitt. When I really look at this game and I break it down, North Carolina has played much better than I thought this year. Sam Howell, the freshman quarterback's actually been quite good. 26 touchdowns and 5 interceptions for the guy. Like, let's give him credit. He's played really, really well at the quarterback spot for a freshman. 26 touchdown passes. That's an incredible number of touchdown passes for a freshman quarterback. He has De'Ami Brown, who's a tremendous receiver. He's been absolutely excellent this year. And you look at this Pitt team. Pitt is not a team that I'm overly comfortable with laying these, more than a field goal with. This is a pedestrian offense. They run the football. Kenny Pickett is a serviceable game manager, dink and dunk type of quarterback. This is not a run up and down the field Pitt offense, in my opinion. You look at recent series history as well. North Carolina's had no problem matching up with this Pitt team. They've lost. They're 4-5 on the season, but they're 5 losses by a combined 19 points. The losses to pretty good teams for the most part. Virginia Tech, App State is a very good Sun Belt team, and they lost that one very close. Clemson, nobody's given Clemson a bigger and tougher battle this season than North Carolina. Remember, they took Clemson down to the wire early this season. There's a lot to like here with them, and they're great as an underdog. I think I've got them at 17-4-1 against the spread their last 21 tries as an underdog. And that's a pretty strong track record. And that goes back to the Larry Fedora era of North Carolina, the era that, ended in disaster for North Carolina. Those were some bad North Carolina teams included in that North Carolina 17-4-1 ATS run as an underdog. So I'm looking at this here as North Carolina in a pretty good situation here. Pittsburgh, they've not been good as home favorites. The last time they were home favorites, they lost outright to Miami. They didn't cover against Delaware, an FCS team, as home chalk. North Carolina is 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the spread, head-to-head last 6 meetings against Pitt. So, and again, if this game is probably pick 'em or below -3, I'd probably stay away. But this has the make and look of a field goal game either way. The last 3 meetings have been decided by 3 points or less as well. 2016, 2017, 2018. The last 3 head-to-head meetings, Pitt and North Carolina, 3 points or less, all of them decided. And I think another thing to mention here is this game is a home game for the Pittsburgh Panthers. How good is the crowd going to be? They're in direct competition right now with the Thursday night football game, the Steelers. Now, I know the Steelers are in Cleveland, but, is Pitt football really the go-to destination in Pittsburgh where the common Pittsburgh sports fan is going to say, you know what? I'm going to go to the Pittsburgh Panther home game against North Carolina, an opponent that's not going to excite them, instead of staying home on a cold night in Pittsburgh and watch the Steeler game on TV. What are they going to decide? Really, what are they going to decide? They're going to decide probably to watch the Steeler game on TV. Steelers are back in the playoff mix again. There's a big game for them tonight against the Browns. I'm not saying for sure that's going to impact the crowd support or the number of fans at the game tonight, but it's something to consider. This game is going to be going head-to-head with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are the team in that city. There's no debate. There's no argument. So I'm worried this is not going to be the usual. Not that Pitt is a strong home field anyway. It's not. But this could be an even weaker Pitt home field tonight than normal, in my opinion. So I'm on North Kakalaki here, +4. The series history points it out. They've won 6 in a row against Pitt. They've covered 5 of 6. Each of the last 3 meetings have been decided by a field goal or less. Pitt might win, but I don't think they're winning this game by more than a field goal. So give me North Carolina here in this game, +4. And again, 4-win team. They need to win 2 of their last 3 games for bowl eligibility. They've talked about wanting to get to a bowl game. They feel they're good enough to get to a bowl game, considering so many of their losses have been close, tough losses for this North Carolina team. So I'm expecting them to play a pretty good game tonight and have a really good chance to get the win. We'll see what the chat's saying here right now. Eddie Euler, Bobano, do your Tiger Cats win Sunday and go to the Grey Cup? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I don't know about cover 6 now because the number's gone up. Hamilton opened 4. It's up to 6. But I definitely believe that we're going to beat Edmonton straight up. I don't know about cover. The one thing that bothers me, Eddie, is that Trevor Harris has played really well against my team over the years. Like, look at last year in the East Final against when we played Ottawa, and he was the Red Blacks quarterback. He shredded our defense. Now, but that's not our defense anymore. We have an elite defense now. Trevor's going to have to win this game in our building. It's going to be much tougher. We have a much better defense. Nobody prepares a team better to play a game, in my opinion, in the CFL than Orlando Steinauer. I will drop my CFL division final plays at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that briefly. Yeah, obviously, I like our chances. I really do. I mean, Edmonton, credit for beating Montreal. I thought Montreal would win that game, but Edmonton's defense is still a liability. Vernon Adams and the Alouettes moved the ball up and down the field in that game. No cat noises. No, I saved those for our old friend that used to be on this channel, Noli. I'm blanking on his name now. Joe Gavazzi. There we go. Joe Gavazzi with the cat noises. He's really good at those. So I wish he was here. It would be a good time let's bring Joe Ranieri on to Betting with the Bag just so we can do a tiger cat noise for everybody in the chat. So, yeah. But again, I don't think this is happening for Trevor Harris this time. I think it's our time. We got the much better defense. You look at our defense statistically compared to Edmonton's, there's no comparison. We have a much better defense. We have a much better defense too than Montreal, and Edmonton's going to find that out, I think, on Sunday. I do like the over more than the side, though. I'll be honest. I think we win the game. I don't know about laying. I laid 4 with Hamilton. Now it's up to 6. I don't like it as much at 6. I think it's the over's worth a look. The latest forecast showed that it was going to be cold but clear with light wind in Hamilton for the game on Sunday. So that means the offenses shouldn't be hampered too much by the weather conditions, which is good news if you like the over in that game. All right, so we've done NFL. We've done college football. It's time to turn our attention to the ice because we know Teddy, the only ice he's paying attention to is the ice you put in your drink to keep it cold. That's about it. He's not an NHL guy, so we're going to do the NHL right now. It's a busy NHL slate. Start with Carolina, Buffalo. We've got the Hurricanes laying -130 to -140 as road favorites. The total 6, pretty much across the board in this game. Like we mentioned this earlier, people betting Carolina heavily here. This has already moved 20 cents toward the Hurricanes. Really, it's a big question mark beside the Buffalo Sabres here. What are we going to see from this Buffalo Sabres team tonight? That's a big question mark. This is a long layoff, first game in nearly a week after playing in Stockholm, Sweden last Friday and Saturday. Those back-to-back games against the Lightning. It's going to be Michael Jordan. What was the NFL pick? Lean, please. I'm on Pittsburgh +3 half unit. Lean to the under. I am not betting the under. I lean only to the under. I am betting Pittsburgh +3. Not with huge confidence, not a strong play, but it's good enough at +3 to get involved, as far as I'm concerned, on the black and yellow on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Buffalo, I don't know what we're going to get tonight. And Buffalo's not in good form right now. They had that hot start to the season. They were playing great offensively. Their offense has cooled off a bit. I think defensively they've come apart a little bit. They're giving up way too many goals lately. I think that's a product of the blue line more than it is the goaltending of Hutton and Linus Ullmark. I just think they are going through a funk right now, and you knew it was going to happen. Buffalo wasn't going to keep up the stretch that they were going through early in the day, but I don't know if I want to lay -130 with Carolina. I know Carolina got off the schneid, blew the doors off Ottawa 8-2. It was one of those spots where they lost in really brutal, bad, horrible fashion in Ottawa Saturday. They were ready for the rematch against the Senators, and they absolutely pounced in that game, took it to the Ottawa Senators in that game. So I'm looking at this here as a spot here where it's definitely a game I'm staying away from, side and total. Like Buffalo, is Buffalo going to be lethargic? Are they going to try to shore up defensively? I don't want to bet an under right now with Buffalo with the way they've played defensively lately, but I don't know if they're going to be clicking with their passes, with their power play, having gone to that trip to Europe and having to come back after 5 days. It's just a tricky handicap all around as far as I'm concerned here. So I'm passing. Maybe if the line gets up a little more, if we get around -140 or -150 on Carolina, maybe I'll bite with a small Buffalo play, but that's not good. And they've been outscored 14-3 in the first period over the last 8 games. Maybe you take Carolina first period. there's an option. They've been absolutely brutal. Buffalo, early in games. They're off the long layoff. They could be sluggish early. Carolina first period, actually, and then you look at Buffalo being really poor in the first period lately. That might be something worth a look here. Eddie mentioning the fact that Carolina's beaten Buffalo 9 straight times. Prince of the City saying, I'm a Steelers fan. Please never do that again. Yeah, I know. That is a good song. I'm not a big Wiz Khalifa fan, but that song's catchy as hell because I always hear Black and Yellow at the Ticat home games. We've sort of adopted that as one of our songs as well, because Ticats wear black and yellow as well, black and gold colors when they take the football field. So, but again, pass on this game. Just too many unknowns and variables right now, as far as I'm concerned, to get involved there. And you can say the same about the next game, Rangers and Tampa. Tampa Bay minus 270, minus 280, total 6.5 shade of the over. All the quotes from Tampa Bay are positive coming out of that 2-game Sweden trip against Buffalo. They won both games. Said we're starting to play better. We started to really come together as a team, really, bond, the team bonding thing. Steven Stamkos was referencing that following the 2-game trip in Stockholm, Sweden against the Sabres. They played well. So Tampa Bay might be starting to get their shit together, so to speak, here. We'll see if they can keep it together tonight because, again, they're in the same boat as Buffalo. It's a long layoff after playing Saturday. The road, the travel back from Sweden for this game here against the New York Rangers. There we go. I was blanking on it for a second. New York took advantage of a Pittsburgh team that was a little banged up the other night. Was able to get a good victory there in that one. We'll see if Artemi Panarin's definitely feeling it. He's been on the score sheet in 9 straight games, 8 goals, 19 points during that game. Definitely a good sign here for the New York Rangers. We'll see if they can keep that going, keep their offense going, which is certainly offense hasn't been the issue for the New York Rangers. It's being able to dig in defensively and keep the puck out of their own net. That's definitely been the issue for the New York Rangers here in this one. Let me get an update. Someone asking me in the chat, is Mika Zibanejad in for the New York Rangers? Let me check on that right now, get an update on that for you. It looks like he's out again. At least that didn't look like he was going to be participating in the morning skate today down there in Tampa Bay. So it looks like he's going to be out again. Really, it's Zibanejad and Mark Stahl that are the main injuries. Yeah, he's not going to play the next few games. So David Quinn's already confirmed that he's going to be out for at least until next week, it looks like, with Mika Zibanejad in terms of his health. So I'm not involved in this game either. It's not the craziest thought to maybe take a chance with the Rangers at a plus price because Tampa Bay could throw a clunker up there, but I'm reading more positive quotes that they're feeling good, they're starting to get their game back again, they're starting to play with more consistency, playing better defensively, getting the goal scoring that they expect. Because there was a time the Tampa Bay Lightning, even offensively, were not quite putting the puck in the net to the amount that we're used to from them. But definitely they're showing signs of maybe turning their season around right now. Next game, Winnipeg, Florida. Florida minus 165. The total 6.5 in this game. I hate this spot for Florida. I really do. It's the first home game off a long road trip, and it's a road trip that ended in style with some barn burners in back-to-back games. A 6-5 shootout win against the Rangers. Left for dead against the Boston Bruins on Tuesday night, down 4-0 going into the third period of that game. And the Panthers come all the way back, tie the game 4-4 in Boston against the vaunted Bruins, and the Florida Panthers end up winning the game in a shootout 5-4. They were pretty happy after that game, the Florida Panthers. They celebrated pretty strongly. And Joel Quenneville said, it was an amazing game. We didn't necessarily see that one coming. This is not a spot I'm laying minus 165. Period. Not at all. Not at all. And this team is still, at times, just when things start to seem to be going well for the Panthers, they throw a clunker in there. I get the sense that's happening tonight. And I like backing teams off a shutout loss, especially a shutout loss they didn't deserve. If you saw that Colorado-Winnipeg game the other night, Winnipeg was all over Colorado. Down to their third-string goalie. Pavel Francouz gets injured, and he's the backup to Grubauer, who's already injured. Now Francouz is injured, and they're down to Adam Werner as their third-string quarterback, or third-string goalie. for the Colorado Avalanche in that game the other night, and he ends up just coming in cold off the bench, not even expecting to play, and he just has this unbelievable performance against the Jets in a shutout win, 4-0 for the Colorado Avalanche the other night. I think Winnipeg off that loss, starting a road trip now. I think it's I don't believe in letdown spots a ton in the NHL, but if there's ever going to be one, it's going to be this game for Florida. You don't come back from 4-0 down in the third period against a team that's won a Stanley Cup in the last decade, that went to the Stanley Cup final last year, Eastern Conference champs, and be on top of your game the next time out. I really think this is a dubious spot here tonight for the Florida Panthers. This is an official play for me. I'm on Winnipeg here at plus 145. Again, I think we're getting a little carried away with Florida's play. The Ranger game was a coin flip. It could have went either way. They could have easily lost that game. The Boston game, they were DOA, and somehow they got off the mat and came back from 4-0 down to win that game by a score of 5-4. I think it's a great, great betting spot and situation for the Jets here. And the Jets to be are, I think, going to be capable of playing some better hockey in recent games. The total's tricky. Gokster, nice to see a Mr. Gokster. And I think someone else was looking at. I'm done betting a Jets game over right now. I'll tell you that right now. At the same time, I'm not betting a Florida game under. You look at Florida, this is a team that can score and they can give them up. And that has been pretty consistent so far this season with the Panthers. You got a dead nuts over team facing a dead nuts under team right now. That means I'm conflicted. That means I'm not betting the total. But Gokster, if you're betting the total, I wish you good luck. But I'm only on Winnipeg here tonight in this game at plus 145. I do believe the Jets-Panthers series history has been pretty strong to the over, but Winnipeg is playing these tight games, these lower scoring games. Their offense hasn't exactly been firing on all cylinders in recent games either. So I do believe that this totals wise, this game is definitely a toss up. Coin flip really is up in the air with which way it could go. All right, next game on this NHL card. Arizona, Minnesota. We've got Minnesota minus 120, total 5.5 shaded to the under. I like Arizona here, plus 100. I think Arizona's starting to get things rolling a bit. You got to give them credit. They had back-to-back big-time wins against Washington and St. Louis. Okay, they blew the lead. They were up 3-0 to the Capitals. Washington comes back, ties it in the final minute, but Arizona prevailed with a shootout win. How about the way they came back, too, against St. Louis? Back-to-back game on the road, and Arizona comes back and beats the St. Louis Blues the other night. Really impressive stuff from the Arizona Coyotes. Rick Tocchet's got to like that they pulled a comeback win for a change. He had been bemoaning the fact that the Coyotes had blown some leads in recent games, and one of those games they blew a lead to was this Minnesota team. Remember, they played just under a week ago in the desert. Minnesota came back to beat Arizona in that game. So you got a nice little revenge situation here setting up for the Arizona Coyotes. And you've got Minnesota returning home off a West Coast trip that ended the other night with a loss to the Los Angeles Kings, 3-1. Poor performance from the Wild. I think Arizona's the better of these two teams. They're starting to play with some confidence again. Minnesota first game home off a road trip. That's not a bet on spot. That's not a Minnesota spot to me. Yeah, give me Arizona here, plus 100. So again, passing the first two games on the card, but I'm on Winnipeg and Arizona here as road underdog, slight road underdog for Arizona at about plus 100. Plus 106 is out there at Pinnacle right now. So I like the Coyotes to get it done against the Wild. Colorado, Edmonton. Got Edmonton minus 135, home favorites, total 6 in this game. Edmonton with a poor game the other night against San Jose. They get blitzed 6-3 by the San Jose Sharks. One thing about Edmonton after a bad defensive game or a game that they've given up a lot of goals, they've come back and played a lot tighter defensively the next game out. So I know someone in the chat mentioned Colorado Edmonton over. I don't know who it was, but I thought I saw someone say they liked Colorado Edmonton over. I don't necessarily love that tonight. Edmonton has had a little bit of a track record where if they're having a bad game defensively and they don't play as well, at that end of the ice like they did against San Jose, they got in penalty trouble. They gave up some odd man rushes. I think it's a situation where Edmonton tries to tighten it up tonight. Colorado's transition to a little bit more of an under team. They don't mind those low-scoring games. Look at the way they played on the road in Winnipeg. Good, solid defensive play. They got the saves they needed. Koskinen in net, as Gokster says, and he's the better goalie. Koskinen's had a great year so far, and I got to give him credit. Mikko Koskinen has played really well in goal for the Edmonton Oilers this season. So I'm again, unders are the bane of my existence. I'm not necessarily in love with betting it because my success with unders is not very good, as I've mentioned many times. But I would be leery of the over tonight in this game anyway, with Edmonton coming off a shoddy defensive outing like that. From a side perspective, it's tricky. Who's going to be in net tonight for the Colorado Avalanche is going to be the question. I think it's going to be Adam Werner again, because I don't think Francouz is going to be ready to go tonight. We know Grubauer's not coming back anytime soon. So I would anticipate Adam Werner being in net. And he was amazing against Winnipeg. This is a minor league goalie most of his career that came out of nowhere to have this great performance against Winnipeg. Those aren't the kind of goalies I trust to have another strong performance in net for a second straight game. That's all there is to it. So that could actually strengthen your case to the person in the chat that liked the over in this game. But it's a tricky game in this one. Francouz is out. Grubauer's out. It's going to be Werner in net again tonight for Colorado. So I'm passing on that game. I would lean under, but not strongly enough. Dallas, Vancouver. Vancouver minus 150. Total 5.5 shade to the under minus 135. I think Vancouver probably wins this game. They've been good at home. Dallas is on the back-to-back after beating Calgary last night, but I don't want to lay $1.50. Total 5.5 shade to the under. I'm really tempted by the over in this game. If I could ever trust Dallas to get out of their defensive shell, they like playing defensive-minded hockey. They're not a prolific offense by any stretch of the imagination. Goal scoring's not been their thing this year, but still, that's a value-laden total for a Vancouver game at home in terms of the over. 5.5, and you can get plus 120 over 5.5 at bookmaker Chris. So I'm leaning over, but it's pulling teeth at times trying to get these Dallas games over the total. It really, really is. It's pulling teeth, and Vancouver's an over team to me, especially at home, but do I trust Dallas enough to pull the trigger with an over on this game is the big question. I'm not sure I do. They just have a propensity playing these low-scoring games. San Jose, Anaheim. Anaheim minus 110, total 6. Anaheim's got issues right now. Their power play's awful. Their defensive play's collapsed in recent games. I think they missed some of these defensemen like Josh Manson and Hampus Lindholm way more than people think. That's a concern. That's now 2 games in a row. They've been shelled. Defensively, Edmonton beats them 6-2. They blow the lead to Detroit the other night and lose that game to the Red Wings. Things are not right now in Anaheim. And what's really a bad sign for me in this game for going into this game for Anaheim is they were, Ryan Getzlaf calling out the team after losing to Edmonton, going into that game against Detroit, and you still find a way to blow that lead and lose that game to the Red Wings. That's a bad sign. That's a red flag to me when we're talking about this Anaheim team. San Jose's playing really good now, much better. I would certainly only look toward the Sharks here in this game. But Anaheim's one of those teams this season where it's just been the case for me, where I bet on them, they lose. I bet against them, they win. They've been one of those teams you just don't have the greatest of reads on. So I'm staying away. John Gibson, you're right, Mr. Gokster, hasn't looked quite as sharp in recent starts. That's definitely a concern as well. So I'm out of this game entirely. I would lean San Jose, but I got enough stronger opinions on the card that I'm not going to go ahead with that one. One of the strong opinions on the card is this last game, Detroit and Los Angeles, LA minus 140, total 6. I'm on Detroit here, plus 126 at Pinnacle, plus 120 to 25 elsewhere. This team has found some adrenaline, some energy with the acquisition of Robbie Fabry, who's played great. It's revitalized this team offensively. Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Mantha are going again and clicking again offensively. They've won 3 games in a row against good teams, Boston, Vegas, and that aforementioned comeback win against Anaheim. You got to like the adrenaline and the energy. And even Dylan Larkin had a great quote saying, we got some confidence and some energy back in our game. That's what it took. Remember, nothing was going right for Detroit. Prior to Robbie Fabry joining the team, they had lost a bunch of games in a row. They were hideous defensively. They weren't scoring goals. And now things have changed for them. And they've beaten 3 good teams in a row, and this will be the weakest team they've played since getting Robbie Fabry, the LA Kings, who I know they beat Minnesota last game 3-1, but you put LA in the role of a favorite where they have that little minus sign beside their name, which indicates that they're a favorite. I'm interested going against them. I like Detroit there at the underdog price. We ride this team right now. They're feeling good again. They've got their confidence back. I definitely like the Red Wings here, plus 125 against Vancouver. Quickly on college basketball before we get to Teddy. Siena, I agree with that line move with the injury to Havard. I think Siena coming off the win against St. Bonaventure is a good look. I can't trust Seton Hall against Michigan State. Seton Hall's a good underdog. Kevin Willard's usually a team I like to get points with as an underdog. But the Miles Powell injury is big. And I need to see Seton Hall get contributions from the other guys in that starting five outside of Powell against a Michigan State team that's an elite this year in college basketball. Tom Izzo's team's loaded this year. Seton Hall showed a little signs of struggle in the games against much weaker competition lately that they've played without Powell. That is a big injury. He's the focal point of that Pirates team. So that's what's keeping me off Seton Hall. I think with a healthy Miles Powell, they're able to compete with Michigan State and give them a game. I'm just not so sure they're able to tonight without him because he's relied upon so heavily. I'm getting more interested by Penn State, actually, against Georgetown. Georgetown's been not so good to start the season. They were expected to have a pretty solid team for Patrick Ewing coming into the year. I can't say I've been enamored with the way Georgetown's started the season to this point, and that's a concern. Defensively, they've had some really shoddy performances. Even against Mount St. Mary's, it was a game where they started off really badly and had to rally to win that game. The question is, how good's Penn State? I think they are pretty good. I know they got Aquino and Mac McClung, two really good players on that Georgetown team. But the Nittany Lions, Lamar Stevens, I think he's a really, really good player for Pat Chambers' team. It's amazing Pat Chambers has survived as long as he has coaching this Penn State basketball team because there's been so many times where it's been rumored he'd be fired or let go, but it hasn't been the case. Mike Watkins has been solid for this team. They're 2-0 to start the season. You can say neither team's been fully tested, but I just think Penn State's looked a little bit better in their step down in class games than Georgetown has so far, and they're the team catching points here in this game. So Georgetown's taken a little money in that game. I'm not sure I fully agree with that. We'll wait it out. We'll see if there's some more Georgetown money that trickles in, but I'm kind of looking to go against that move and might put some Penn State in my pocket at plus, especially if it hits +3. I'll definitely be interested on the Nittany Lions there in that game. The Gavitt tip-off games, as they call it, with these Big East teams playing these Big Ten games early in the season. All right, so that's my brief look at college basketball. It's not a big card today. Those are really some of the games I'm looking at. Siena and Penn State really stand out more than the rest on this college basketball slate. Cincinnati, Alabama, A&M over the total as well. John Brannon's the coach there now. Northern Kentucky head coach before that. It's gone up 134. I got 132, and it's gone up a couple of points. I agree with that. Cincinnati's going to try to run and gun a bit more. The Mick Cronin days are gone. They're not going to be that slow-paced, focused solely on defensive basketball team that they've been in the past. First game didn't show that when they played Ohio State. That game stayed well under the total, but I think we saw last night in Ohio State's win against Villanova, that team can play some defense. You can flat out get after it on the defensive end of the basketball court. So I think that takes away from that game staying under just a bit the fact that Ohio State's played some really good defense early in the season. Now Cincinnati's got a team that should be able to absolutely manhandle. They could play their up and down style of basketball. The question is, how much does A&M score? But I think Cincinnati will get the pace they want. They'll finally be able to get out in the open floor. That game will go over the total. So I'm on that as well. Alabama, A&M, Cincinnati over, which the best number right now, 134 at Heritage Sports with that. All right, let's get to Teddy Covers finally and welcome him to the show. He's on with us every single morning here on Betting with the Bag. Teddy, how are you on this Thursday morning, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, Ian. I've had a good week. And when you're winning, you just wake up in a little bit of a better mood than the other way around. So, and I'm impressed with your college hoops, and I love that Cincinnati over for what it's worth. This is what I do with college hoops now. I look at the card every day, and I don't bet a whole lot, but I want to go through it. And I know that after Thanksgiving is when I really start to step up. But the concept of Cronin from Cincinnati to UCLA, what have we seen? Heavy steam on UCLA unders now. And meanwhile, Cincinnati still has all of the Cronin stats in their database. and they're not that team anymore. So I love that concept. I love that look, and I give you credit because I know you're working how many different sports now, and to have as much knowledge as you did, and when to spread as much knowledge you did on that little college hoop segment right there, I give you credit, Ian. Good for you, man. That's good stuff.
I appreciate that, but it's at the expense of sleep, unfortunately.
I understand.
We're feeling that
You look the same. There's something about November, dude. You just end up, you get big bags in your eyes. You're grumpy with everyone. And then, I mean, it does calm down after Thanksgiving when college football kind of takes a back seat for a couple of weeks. And that's when you get a chance to breathe. But from here to Thanksgiving, it's like, I call it like finals week, where you finish one thing, you move on to the next. And you finish one thing and you move on to the next. And hopefully, at some point you get a chance to sleep. But there's not a one of us that's not burning the midnight oil right now. It's just the nature of what we do at this time of the year.
Yeah, and I'll be looking forward. Of course, for years when it comes to my college basketball handicapping, I've dabbled a lot in the Metro Atlantic, the MAAC. I'm looking forward to that starting out in a couple of months when conference play goes. And knowledge of that conference helped me out last night. I went against Iona as 5-point favorites against Ohio. Ohio with a good coach, by the way, there in Jeff Bowles. That was a good hire by that team, a team that was expected to be middle of the pack in the MAC this year. But anytime you get those Metro Atlantic teams in non-conference play, Teddy, and they're laying points, that's a pretty weak conference. That's as much as I love that conference, it is a weak mid-major conference. And when they're playing at least a decent team from another conference and they're laying points against that team, I don't mind going against them. And we know Tim Cluse, Iona teams, they don't play much defense. Certainly didn't play much defense last night, losing outright as favorites against Ohio. So I was, again, knowledge of the MAC sort of helped me out there with that one. But nevertheless, Teddy, we've got a Thursday card to break down. We'll start with Thursday Night Football, NFL style. Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns. This one's been back and forth, 2.5, 3, 2.5, 3. Good tug of war going on with this number. It's 3 pretty much across the board now on Cleveland as home favorites. Even money, -3, about +100 in most locations, total 41.5. I don't buy Cleveland beating Buffalo as a turnaround. I know they're saying we could still make a run. Cleveland is trying to say that, trying to spin that. Trying to use that as fuel for their fire, so to speak. But I still saw a lot of issues with Cleveland last week. Penalties, still take too many. Red zone offense stinks. The play calling is horrendous inside the 5-yard line. Can we finally get a play where we don't run up the gut inside the 5-yard line? Can we maybe roll Baker Mayfield out? Could we maybe do a play action or something inside the 5? No, it's the same boring, pedestrian, predictable play calls and bad red zone offense in terms of play calling and execution that's haunting this team. They're lucky they got away with it and barely escaping with a win against the Buffalo Bills last week. I'm not convinced. I don't love the team traveling on the road on a short week, but you can counter that with Cleveland with a rookie head coach on the short week, and we know long term that's been horrible ATS. I don't love it, but I played a little Pittsburgh +3, and I would lean under the total here in this game. Teddy, what's your thoughts? Steelers taking on the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way I could play. It would be Pittsburgh. And when I find a public underdog in a single event game, or a very public favorite, I don't tend to get involved. I mean, it could only be Steelers, and I could only take +3 with Pittsburgh. But it would only be Steelers here for me. And look, I mean, it's kind of an obvious game in that regard. We all know that Cleveland's execution issues have been enormous. The Browns have more talent than the Steelers. But talent does not necessarily equate to winning games and covering point spreads and winning by margin. Remember, at -3, and there's a couple of 2.5s, but mostly it's 3 now. So at -3, Browns win like they did last week is not good enough. They got to win by more than a field goal. And you are talking about, and I mean, I watch this team really closely. And the finger pointing, I honestly don't know if I want to point the finger at Mayfield or Kitchens. They're both lost right now. I mean, Mayfield is lost in the red zone. The mojo that he had last year is gone. And you see that sometimes with sophomore QBs. A good coaching staff will coach their way out of it. And that hasn't happened with Kitchens. I mean, there's been, I would have to point my finger at the head coach more than any other factor. And again, this is a guy who was a running backs coach, last year, and then gets promoted to OC, and then gets promoted to head coach, and everything goes great. But reality has shown up for Freddie Kitchens. And right now, among the 32 NFL coaches, he ranks near the bottom in getting his team ready and getting his team to execute. And you can only blame the coach. Talent level is there. And sure, we can blame the players. There's been a million plays. The last 2 weeks, there's literally, it feels like an endless number of plays that the Browns could have made and almost made, and the ball's in his hands and the ball's in this guy's hands, and they just can't come down with it. They can't get the game-changing defensive play. They can't get the big strike TD. At some point, they're going to hit some of those. Maybe tonight's the night. But the Steelers' defense is covering point spreads by themselves right now. I will not stand in front of Pittsburgh in this point spread range. Pass.
All right,
I guess the bottom line is I'm not playing the game. A lot of talk for a game I'm not playing.
That's all right. We want to give opinions and lean Pittsburgh, but not playing it. I did play Pittsburgh again, just a half unit play. By the way, I actually play some props on these primetime games. Usually just the primetime games, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. I usually look at the props, the player props, about 2 hours before kickoff, 3 hours later in the day when I have a little bit more time. I will absolutely be interested in a Baker Mayfield, will he throw an interception? Yes, prop tonight. Especially when you're seeing what Minkah Fitzpatrick's done for the Steelers defense, how he's transformed them, how he's had an interception, it seems, in pretty much every game. He's scoring defensive touchdowns for this group. That's a prop that makes a ton of sense to me. Baker Mayfield to throw an interception tonight. I'll be looking for that one somewhere. I think that's something that's definitely worth a look in this Thursday night game. We'll turn our attention now to college football, Teddy. We got two games, one in the MAC and then the ACC ESPN game tonight. Buffalo, Kent State. Buffalo taking a lot of money here, up from 3.5 as road favorites all the way up to 6, total 55.5. I missed the best number with Buffalo, so I didn't bet it. I would lean to that side. I like the way they're playing. Their offense has come to life in recent weeks. 3 straight wins. They blew out the Michigan schools, Central and Eastern, in their last 2 games. Kent State finding ways to lose, although I will say their last 3 losses have been by a touchdown or less. Their offense hasn't exactly clicked in every game. I think Buffalo's the better of these teams. But again, with this line now 6 when it was 3.5, I'm not going to jump in now. That Buffalo's at -6. I do have some interest in the over in this game, 55.5. Buffalo has been finding their way offensively with big outputs in recent games. Kent State, the question is, what can you get from them on the offensive side of the football? If Buffalo gets you to 35, 38, which I think they're capable of, could you get those 21 points from Kent State to push this game over the total? I think you could. It's another game I got a small play on the over. Lean to Buffalo. That's the way I'm looking here. Teddy, what about you with the Bulls and the Golden Flashes?
So Kent State really is an interesting team to talk about because they faced 3 really hard non-conference games. They didn't play them back-to-back early in the season. They played one and then had a lesser opponent, one and then a lesser opponent, one and then a lesser opponent. So from a statistical standpoint, the Golden Flashes stats looked awful coming into October because they lost 48-0 Wisconsin and 55-16 against Auburn and 30-7 against Arizona State. The offense didn't work in any of those games, and the defense didn't work in any of those games. This is not a step-up-in-class team. When we take those 3 games against the Power 5 foes, and not just any good Power 5 foes, out of the equation, they've been in every game. Every single one of them, and they haven't lost by more than a touchdown yet. They've been a good point spread team in recent weeks. They've been a good underdog. They've been a good favorite. They've been capable of hanging around with some solid teams. Ohio U, Miami O, Toledo the last 3 games. That's not the dregs of the MAC by any stretch of the imagination. All that said, I can totally understand the Buffalo money. When you talk about a team that, has gotten a lot better since September, Buffalo at or near the top of the list. They're pretty good. They've covered 4 in a row, won 3 of those ball games. And it's been about the defense. This, when we talk about the smaller conferences, when you find a defense that can get the job done, those tend to be bet on teams. And Buffalo, that defense has been dynamite the last month. They've given up, the last 4 games. Again, all in conference play, and only 1 against the bottom feeder, Akron. But 3 touchdowns or less in every one of those contests, and allowing 55 points over the 4-game span overall. That's a good defense and a good defensive line that could give Kent State trouble. So, bottom line for me is I'm not playing the game. Again, lots of analysis and not a wager. I think there's a legit case you can make for both of these teams, and that leaves me on the sidelines here.
All right, on we go to ACC action. North Carolina, Pittsburgh. We've got Pitt laying 49.5. The total in this one. Interesting matchup here with these two teams. North Carolina, I'll be honest, I thought coming into the season, Mac Brown, the head coach, how good is this team going to be? Freshman quarterback, Sam Howell, a defense that was absolutely god-awful last year. Well, they've been competitive. Sam Howell, the freshman quarterback, has 26 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. I think you got to give that guy a lot of credit for that. The offense has worked well enough, especially through the air with Howell. The defense it still has its blemishes, and it's still not a great defense, but they're certainly better on that side of the football than they were last year. Again, Howell's taken to Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, who's come over, who's used a little bit more of an up-tempo, spread-based attack with this North Carolina offense, and it's worked well for them. You got Pittsburgh, a team that's found ways to win, I guess you could say. The last game against Georgia Tech, 20-10, but they needed a goal line stand, to keep Georgia Tech out of the end zone at one point in that game. And Pittsburgh, when you look at them, a very pedestrian offense. They're run heavy. Kenny Pickett, is a dink and dunk type quarterback. It's just move the ball incrementally down the field. They do have a really good defense, and that's the one concern. Can North Carolina handle this Pitt defense? That's going to be the question mark for me. But 4-5. When I was looking at this game more in depth, I was seeing a North Carolina team that was talking like getting bowl eligibility is important to this team. They want it. They're 4-5. They're going to have to win 2 of their last 3 games to do it. They've matched up pretty well with Pitt. If you look at recent series history, they're 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the spread. Last 6 head-to-head meetings against Pitt. I believe they're on a 17-4 ATS run, something in that stratosphere as an underdog, and that includes some really bad North Carolina teams under Larry Fedora that flat out quit at the end of his tenure as the head coach. So Pitt's had no ability to beat this team at all, let alone beat them by margin. Each of the last 3 meetings has been decided by 3 points or less, and I don't want to go crazy about this element to boost the North Carolina case here, Teddy, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing at Cleveland tonight. That might impact the crowd at the game tonight at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. What are you going to choose on a cold night in Pittsburgh in November? I'm going to go out there, watch Pittsburgh against a middle-tier ACC team, the Panthers, or am I going to stay home where it's nice and warm in my house and watch a big, huge game for the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Cleveland Browns when we're back in the playoff race again that the Steelers are? I think there's going to be people that might make that decision. Hey, I want to watch the Steeler game on TV. I don't want to go out in the cold, watch Panthers play at home here. So I'm not saying that's definitely going to impact the crowd and the number of fans at the game, but I think there's a potential anyway that it could impact how many fans are there and might lessen the home field edge a bit for Pitt in this game tonight. Either way, I'm on North Carolina here, plus the points. Teddy, what do you like in this game?
Yeah, I put the Tar Heels +5 in my pocket on Monday. It might have even been Sunday night. I'm trying to remember. But for either Sunday night or Monday morning, I took North Carolina plus. Every game that they played this year has been, decided with one exception. The Georgia Tech game has been decided by a touchdown or less. Worth noting, they beat Georgia Tech by more than Pitt did, for whatever that's worth. Although Georgia Tech has gotten progressively better as the season has progressed. I do worry about the Tar Heels defense. You look at their last 2 losses: the Virginia Tech loss in OT, the Virginia loss. Both times the defense needed to stop and couldn't get it, and that does concern me against Pitt. And the weather concerns me a little bit. This is Pitt weather, not North Carolina weather. But you talk about the Panthers' pedestrian offense. I was reading an article from the Tar Heels. It had quotes from the Tar Heels coordinators who talk about how they're going to prepare for this defense like Clemson's defense. They've already seen a defense like this, but they're certainly impressed and taking Pitt's defense very, very seriously. Narduzzi, as we know, a pretty good defensive mind. But from a North Carolina defensive standpoint, and the Tar Heels do get their best running back tonight, which should help. But they're talking about it's going to be a Sam Howell night. Pitt's going to stack the box, and if Howell can make plays downfield against single coverage, Pitt's going to be, going to have to trade points with North Carolina. And I think Howell can do that, even on the road, even in the cold. So while we have seen some Pitt money, the plus, some North Carolina money, the +5 got in my pocket early, and I have no hesitation, no expectation of doing anything with that. I'm going to keep it in my pocket and expect the Tar Heels to hang tough tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And again, 3 points or less the last three meetings between these teams. So every game's been field goal game pretty much. And field goal game gets you the money if you're on the North Carolina side. All right, so we talked college hoops, we talked hockey, got that out of the way. We've gone through the NFL and college football with Teddy. So now it's NBA with Teddy for the next part of the show. And then we'll get his updated weekend wagers in NFL and college football to wrap up the show. But we'll go to NBA now. And before we get to tonight's card, NBA, Teddy, is the one sport this time of year from a handicapping perspective for me that goes on the back burner. It's the one that I'm not involved with day in, day out. I'm looking more at college basketball, NHL, and the two footballs. But I do keep a very close eye regularly. Almost every game I watch some part of the Toronto Raptors. And I got to say this. Nick Nurse with this guy. Maybe it's too soon to say this. Second-year head coach. I know he won the championship last year. He keeps this up with what he's doing coaching-wise, preparation-wise, adjustments-wise, somehow putting a roster together with depletion and injuries galore like he has these last few games during this Raptors road trip. He keeps this up. We're going to be talking about this guy in the Eric Spoelstra realm. Maybe not Popovich, but I'm saying he's trending toward being one of these coaches you just trust to get the job done, have his team ready to go, be able to, put different schemes out there like a box and one like he did against Golden State in the NBA Finals last year, which worked to perfection. I'm impressed with this guy. This is a depleted Raptors team. To see them just playing so damn well on this road trip, another win for them last night against Portland, I'm beyond impressed with what I'm seeing from him as a coach and from this Raptors team. It's had all these injuries with Lowry and Ibaka, and OG Anunoby went down the other night. That they found a way to still win these games, beat the Lakers, hang tough in a back-to-back with the Clippers and nearly win that game before falling short late. Really impressed with Nick Nurse. Teddy, what do you think of the Raptors? I'll throw it out to you. What do you think of them?
I cashed your winning bet with Toronto last night, so I'm in love with the Raptors today.
Oh, so you're happy.
And
Good
Nurse.
Stuff.
And frankly, conceptually, I'm with you 100% of the way. Okay. Think about the run to the finals last year for Toronto. Okay. They're down 0-2 to the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's exactly where they've been. Okay. They've been there before. And Toronto loses those spots. And that roster had a lot, they don't rally back and win 4 straight, but they did. Kawhi's going to get the credit. He's the superstar. Coaching staff had something to do with that. And then obviously the momentum in Toronto's favor, the ability to bring that forward. And you look at this roster right now, you're absolutely right. They're missing, and not just Kawhi, Lowry's out, and Ibaka's out, and Anunoby's out. But they had good depth last year. They have good depth again this year. And they have a coach who's seeing things clearly right now, and a team that's hungry to prove something without Kawhi. So I'm with you on the Raptors as right now being a bet-on team and Nurse being a bet-on coach. And I love the Spoelstra analogy because when you talk to a lot of people that bet NBA, that write about NBA, Spoelstra's name never comes up, as one of these elite. And you and I both know, Ian, there's a lot of coaches, Spoelstra's a moneymaker, dude. Always has been.
Yep.
In the road dog role, a lot of good roles for Eric Spoelstra. But he's an underrated coach in that regard. He's not Pop. Pop won the titles. Spoelstra had LeBron, is the way that the mainstream narrative have gone. Despite the fact that Pop had a few good players on his roster too. But I'm with you on Nurse right now. He's definitely and the Raptors as a team with the injuries. They're a value-laden squad right now. They're playing good basketball.
Yeah, and it doesn't help to have a bona fide all-star and maybe a blossoming superstar on the team in Pascal Siakam. Man, that guy, it's unbelievable the rise in his play over the last couple of years. Great segue talking about and bringing up Eric Spoelstra. Can we cash a ticket with Eric Spoelstra tonight, Teddy? It's the Miami Heat taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. First game on the NBA rotation. Miami 4-point road favorites, total 215. I'll tell you what, John Beilein, give him credit. This is a scrappy bunch he's got here with these Cavaliers. They're undermanned, outmanned on a lot of nights, but he's gotten them working hard, especially at the defensive end. See if they can compete here with Miami. Did you do anything with this game, Teddy? Heat, Cavs.
It's the only game in the NBA I bet tonight. And you guys know who I have out there in the chat. I know you know who I have because we talked about Cleveland on Tuesday when they went to Philadelphia, and I'm like, the Cavs are bet on every game. The Cavs are bet on every game right now. The markets will catch up eventually. Right now, I'm going to ride Cleveland. And you talk about Beilein. Boy, you read the quotes coming out of that locker room. The chemistry's there. they've bought in. The veterans get along with the youngsters on that team. Tristan Thompson's been a monster. And coming off a game in which Kevin Love, good look for the win, and it rims out, and he's like, oh, he thought it dropped. We always hear the narrative, oh, they're coming off this disappointing loss, oh, a heartbreaker, and they're not going to be able to bring it tonight. And the results in the NBA are the exact opposite of that. The mainstream narrative doesn't play with what actually happens on the court. The team that just lost the heartbreaker, the next time they come out, they're ready to play. They want to win. Miami, little one-game road trip to Cleveland, a little bit fat and happy. I'm not looking to bet against the Heat, all right? But I'm riding Cleveland right now. I put the Cavs plus 4.5 in my pocket. You can still find one, mostly plus 4s out there this morning.
All right, so that is the one bet that Teddy's got
That's
on
it.
the NBA card. Right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm happy to talk the other games, but that's the only thing I bet.
All right, very good. So we'll go rapid fire then through the other games. Chicago, Milwaukee, 11.5, 229 the total in this game. Chicago Bulls get the win against the New York Knicks the other night. It was a revenge spot, too, because Chicago blew a lead at Madison Square to New York earlier in the season, and Chicago got him back the other night. Can they hang tough with this mighty Milwaukee team? That's the question. What's your lean or opinion here, Bucks and Bulls?
I want to see what the Bucks look like without Chris Middleton tonight. You know, that's an impact injury for Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's a team I really don't like stepping in front of the Bucks. You know, I need a good excuse to step in front of Milwaukee. Although there might be some bias. I want Chicago at home. I don't necessarily want Chicago on the highway. So this is a pure watch for me. I really don't know what the Bucks are going to look like. I'm interested to see their pace tonight without Middleton, their offensive execution. It's a watch and learn game, very clearly for me. Kobe White, we loved him in the fourth quarter against the Knicks on Tuesday. I'm not going to ask him to do it 2 games in a row.
All right, good stuff. Dallas, New York. Dallas, 7.5-point road chalk, total 215 in this game. And like I say, I'm in and out when it comes to the NBA at this time of year, but I know for a fact Dallas was off a tough loss the other night against Boston. The red-hot Celtics have, won 9 in a row now or something like that. They played great ball after losing their opener. They haven't lost since the Celtics, and the Mavericks gave them a battle but fell short late. Bounce-back spot for them. And this New York team, I wouldn't be trusting them with my mortal enemies money right now, the way that they've been going and trending. So to me, just without doing in-depth look into this game, Teddy, I would certainly lay the points with Dallas or nothing at all in this game. What do you think about Mavericks and Knicks?
And this, too, like the Bulls-Knicks game, a revenge spot, this is a revenge spot because Dallas, last Friday, not weeks ago, it's a loss they remember. Last Friday, they were 11-point home chalk to the Knicks and stunk. Dallas, it was one of those games they could not get in sync. They kept calling, timeouts, and it just didn't come together. And they came out the next night, they're like, no, we're mad now. And I forget who they played the next night, but they just hammered them. So I'm certain the Mavs will recognize and remember that loss. I'm certain that the Knicks, if they're not the very worst team in the NBA, they're number 29. You can make an argument to 29 or 30, but they're right at the bottom. And then the way I want to make money against NBA bottom feeders, you bet against them at home. So it's Dallas or pass. This is the only other one I seriously considered today was the Mavs. The price isn't right. 7.5 seemed to me a little, it was higher than my number. And I got the Knicks number 30 in the NBA. So it was a little bit rich for me to lay, especially for a team like Dallas that, I worry about them in the favorite role. I like them in the dog role when you're talking about, more than 7 with Dallas. And at 7.5, that means that they don't foul at the end. And then you got to, so they have to be leading by margin. Lean Dallas didn't get there.
All right, lean Dallas, but just a few too many points for Teddy to want to lay with the Mavericks in this one. Clippers and the Pelicans. We've got big money coming in on the Clippers. Open 1 up to 4 now. Clippers as road favorites in Nolans. The total 235.5 in this game. Well, we know what we get usually with Gentry teams. Not a lot of defense, and we're not seeing much right now in that regard from this Pelicans team. Hell, I remember seeing the Toronto game there last Friday night. That's the game they lost Lowry and Ibaka to injury, and they still shredded that sorry Pelicans defensive basketball team in that one. What's your thoughts, Teddy? Clippers and Pelicans.
It's an impossible game because of the injuries, and we're not talking secondary injuries. We're talking major injuries. Paul George now is expected to play for the Clips tonight, but We don't know if he's going to be playing with Kawhi or not. Kawhi doesn't usually play back-to-backs. He played last night and the first night of back-to-backs, and that's still officially a question mark for L.A. For New Orleans, Brandon Ingram, who has been dynamite for that team this year. He's really, I mean, you talk about a player that I didn't expect anything out of, and all of a sudden, he's just wow. Don't know if he's going to play tonight. He's a big question mark. He's got a knee injury. Okafor is a question mark for tonight. Lonzo Ball is going to be out for the Pelicans tonight. Josh Hart is going to be out for the Pelicans tonight. But when you're talking about Okafor and Ingram for the one team, and then maybe George, but not for sure, and maybe Kawhi, but not for sure for the other team, that's a lot of question marks around elite players. That this is one you got to wait until the last hour before tip-off to get involved, in my opinion.
Lots of injuries, so make sure you check those in the hours or minutes before tip-off. Make sure you know who's in or who's out if you're going to bet that one. Atlanta, Phoenix, we've got the Suns laying 7.5 as home favorites here. Total 228.5, 229. I remember growing up as a kid, and I'd hear this song on the radio. It's an old song by Christopher Cross from the 80s. Sailing takes me away to where I'm away. You know what? Sailing in this game, Teddy, the point spread value on the Phoenix Suns. It's sailing away. The ship has sailed. And you're starting to see now the Phoenix Suns laying the kind of points you would expect from a team that's had the start to the season they've had. What's your thoughts here, Hawks and Suns?
No, first of all, I could flip you off right now. I thought I had put that song permanently out of my memory, and now it's going to be in my head again. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're kidding. That song in particular, of all songs, has a personal connection to you.
That might be one of the worst songs of all time. And it just sticks in your head. So thanks, Ian.
Sorry about that.
But the point you made was absolutely right. And that was when I looked at this spread, I'm like, oh, well, there it went. Phoenix was nice. There it went. We haven't seen the Suns. I don't think they laid this price in any game last year. I didn't go back and look. I can't imagine they did. It might have been some game where someone was resting everyone. They haven't, 7.5. They've laid up to 3.5 this year. This is a whole new point spread range for a team that, look, there's a lot of things to like about Phoenix. And for Atlanta tonight, again, without Collins, without Herter's not playing this evening. Vince Carter's not really a factor. He's not in tonight. There's some personal situation with him. But it's a shorthanded team, missing key pieces on the tail end of a road. It's not an Atlanta spot by any stretch of the imagination. All right, it isn't. The question is, can you get there with Phoenix in a price range where they haven't been in years? And now not only to win, but to win by margin. And, of course, I mean, the Suns, it's all about the three-point shooting right now. They've hit 11 or more threes, and I think it's 8 straight games. They did it against the Lakers the other night. Wasn't good enough. Too many points, but I don't want the dog. Pass.
Yeah. See, people agree with you in the chat. Eric Nisbet, that song absolutely sucks. And I said to him, yeah, it sucks even more when I try to sing it. So there you go. But nevertheless, on we go. Last game on the NBA card, Brooklyn and Denver. Denver laying 8.5, total 222 in this game. Hasn't been a great crisp start to the season for the Nuggets. Are they ready to lay 8.5 tonight, Teddy, against Brooklyn?
No. I would only play Brooklyn in this spot. But, the quotes coming out of the Nets locker room aren't good. And let's start with the Denver side of the equation. Okay, this team isn't clicking right now for whatever reason. It's like there's something in the gears. Maybe they'll get there, but they're in fits and spurts. The defense, and especially offensively, and Jokic's a superstar, and he's not playing like a superstar, and the supporting cast is playing like a supporting cast. They don't have the go-to guy right now. They're not a team I'm interested in laying this price with. Denver right now is a one-way team. I'll be looking for spots to bet against the Nuggets, but, it's a Brooklyn team, and every quote coming out of there, blew another game the other night. Every quote coming out of the Nets right now is, hey, it's a work in progress. We're getting there. It might get there. The Nets are not what they were last year right now. A huge roster upheaval. They have injuries tonight. They were talking that Kyrie might not play in Denver this evening. So it's not like I'm excited about taking the points with Brooklyn tonight either. If I had to play it, that's the way it would look because I know I'm not laying with Denver. But easy pass for me.
All right, easy pass on the Nets and the Nuggets. So that's the wrap on the NBA card. We'll turn our attention for the rest of the show. We got about 10 minutes left to NFL and college football for the weekend. Of course, every morning on the show, Teddy updates the wagers he's placed with Jimmy on the show. He's already placed a bunch between now and Wednesday's show. From yesterday's show to this morning, Teddy, any new bets that you've placed for NFL or college football action this weekend?
Yeah, I made a handful, but let's talk. So there was 2 games that moved that I talked that I was gonna bet. I was waiting for a 7 with Wyoming, and the 7s are gone. I grabbed a 6.5 with the Wyoming Cowboys in college football, betting number 3 of 53. I talked about Cal. I was waiting for a 7 with Cal. The 7s looked like they were going. I grabbed a 6.5 with Cal as well, betting number 362. And I'm betting ugly. I put UMass in my pocket, and maybe I'll hate myself. I put UCLA in my pocket, too. I understand I've stepped in front of Utah a couple times this year, and it has not worked out well for me. UCLA controls their own destiny. All right? They're catching 21. They win out, they go to the Pac-12 title game. All right? All Utah wants to do is win this game and move on. They're not let's beat them by 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns. I get the hook, plus 21.5. I got to the window with the Bruins, so I got some big ugly underdogs. We'll see how it works out. But it's a pretty dog-heavy card in college football for me this week.
I kind of get it with UMass because the question in that game is Northwestern even have it's a horrible defense, UMass. I get it, but does Northwestern have the offense and the quarterback play, which seemingly has been non-existent all year, to be a team capable of covering 41 points, 41.5 points as a favorite? We don't know that yet. And I certainly don't want to lay it. But I appreciate your boldness for wanting to take this UMass team. But again, when you're talking about a team of their caliber, which isn't very high, sometimes you're going to get those kind of points to begin with. So that's the updates there. I'll run down what I'm looking at in college football this weekend. Teddy, you can chime in on my thoughts on it if you do have them. I don't understand all the love here for Marshall tomorrow night. Marshall's a very good team. I cashed with Louisiana Tech last week. They were only laying 5.5 against North Texas. I couldn't believe that number, and they ended up pummeling North Texas in that football game. And Skip Holtz is a road underdog. Do you know how good that track record's been over the years? And here it is again popping up. Skip Holtz, catching points, especially on the road, been very good for him over the years. And their only loss this year is to Texas. That's it. It's the only loss for this La Tech team. Jamar Smith's been great at the quarterback spot. Louisiana Tech's defense has gotten better as the season's progressed. Marshall's defense, I don't think, is quite as good this year as it was last year. I like La Tech there in that game. I like Indiana plus 14.5 against Penn State. In a clear letdown spot. I wrote that up in an article I did for some site this week about letdown spots for teams off a crushing loss have been working out pretty good. Look at SMU, what happened to them against East Carolina last week. I mean, that's just one of many examples where the team off the loss in the big game is more vulnerable to the letdown spot than the team off the win in the big game. Remember, and I mentioned that in the article too, Kansas State, Oklahoma. Kansas State won that big game, but they didn't let down the next week. They came out against Kansas and beat up the Jayhawks. So I think it affects the losing team in the big game more, the letdown, than the winning team. So I think Penn State, a little dubious spot. My favorite bet of the week, Teddy, I couldn't believe this number was this cheap. Louisville -4 against NC State. I couldn't believe it. NC State's been horrible. There's no quarterback play, none, zero. I don't care if it's McKay. I don't care if it's Bailey Hawkman. I don't care if it's Devin Leary. I don't care if it's my cousin at quarterback for the NC State Wolfpack. They have no offense right now. Louisville's, I know it was a tough loss for them last week against Miami, but I think Louisville, and there's some quarterback concerns with them too, injury-wise. Mikhail Cunningham, Juwan Pass got injured and out for the season weeks ago. Is Cunningham going to play? But I'm going to take whoever's at quarterback for Louisville and their defense a little bit over NC State. I think it's a dirt cheap number on Louisville there in that game. So I'll start with those. Louisville, Indiana, Louisiana Tech. Any thoughts on those three, Teddy?
So I have Indiana in my pocket. I'm with you 100%. And you want to talk about a team much like Minnesota, not getting a whole lot of respect. Doesn't matter what they've done. Oh, it's Indiana. It's Indiana. They've been good. And they gave Penn State all they could handle last year. 5-point game last year. I thought that number was a little bit inflated. Certainly wouldn't talk out of that one, being that I have the Hoosiers in my pocket. Marshall, Louisiana Tech is a really interesting game. And you said something that I want to ask you about in this one in particular, and it's not anything I'm involved with. I didn't play it. I'm not going to play it. I don't think. I mean, at 7, I don't think it gets to 7. But you said that you don't think Marshall's defense is as good as it was last year. And I've been impressed with Marshall's defense on a couple of different occasions this year. And when I see a team like Louisiana Tech that's faced Rice, UMass, Southern Miss, UTEP, North Texas in their last 5 games, and not a one of them plays a lick of defense, and now they're playing a team that does play defense, it concerns me enough. This is a big, sharp move on Marshall, and that's not one that I'm really looking to step in front of. And last but not least, you talk about Louisville. I wouldn't talk you out of Louisville. I wouldn't do it in a minute. But for as much struggles NC State has on offense, Louisville's defense is not, this isn't I'm super excited about laying more than a field goal with this team on the road type of defense. So certainly wouldn't talk you out of it, but it didn't make my card because of the QB injury and because I don't trust Louisville's defense. But it's not anything that I'm like, no, I like the other side. It'd be Louisville or pass. I just passed.
Yeah, and those are the main 3. Those are the 3 I really like. Those in terms of top 3 plays for college football this week, those are among the top 3. And Louisville's probably my favorite. If I had a top play, that would be it. I really like Louisville there. I mean, the other ones I'm considering is Baylor getting the points against Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma surviving for dear life against Iowa State last week. I know Baylor, you could poke holes at their undefeated record, but I think their defense can still cause some problems a little bit for Oklahoma. We know Oklahoma's defense the last couple of games against Kansas State and Iowa State reverted back to last year's Oklahoma defense again. So kind of like Baylor there. And I'm tempted by Tom Herman in the underdog role again. I can't help but not be. It's been something I usually do. I'm a little bit more leery because this is a Texas team that's showing some glaring holes for me on a weekly basis. But I am considering Baylor. I am considering Texas. And I am considering laying the points with Kentucky against Vanderbilt because I think Vanderbilt's a dead as a doornail team. Any thoughts on those, Teddy? Kentucky, Texas, and Baylor.
I have Texas +7 in my pocket. That's what we do. We don't think about it. You see Tom Herman as a dog, you wait for the best number, and you grab it. So I didn't think about it. Baylor's on the short list. I haven't pulled the trigger. I'm tempted. You're tempted. We're all tempted. Going around town, everybody I talk to is tempted by Baylor. And everyone's like, well, did you play him? Well, I don't know yet. So it's one of those deals. I'm right there with you with the, it's like a little bit of a head scratcher of a point spread. You're like, really? 10? Shouldn't they open this 9.5 at least? I'm not convinced I'm going to get the window there, but I certainly lean in that direction. And what was the third one? It was another one I had an opinion on.
Kentucky 10.5 against Vandy.
Oh yeah. So that's one I can't lay 10. I understand the desire to want to fade Vandy, and if you find the bottom feeders, you're fading them every week. You fade Akron every week, keep fading them. Yeah, no problem. But Kentucky is not a team I'm comfortable laying any price with anywhere. And again, I mean, they're a frustrating team offensively, and asking them to win by margin is not something I can do. Ask anyone that had them last week how frustrating they are offensively when they get to first and goal twice in the last 5 minutes and can't punch it in either time.
All right, and NFL, I'll run through what I'm looking at there. Man, I'm getting more interested in Carolina as this number comes down against Atlanta. I'm not sold on Atlanta being back because they beat New Orleans. I mean, they were up for that game. They're off a bye. Saints had a terrible football game, their worst of the season. I'm not sure that's a sign of an Atlanta turnaround. I think that's a one-game blip. Let's not forget, everybody wanted Dan Quinn out the door. We worried about effort waning for this Atlanta team prior to that win against New Orleans. I'm not sure that all of a sudden that flips a switch the rest of the year. So I kind of like Carolina there, that number's coming down to -5. The Dallas line, I'm going to be interested in the Cowboys against Detroit. We'll see how that number becomes widely available. Obviously, the quarterback concerns Driscoll or Stafford for Detroit, holding that one up. The one that I really like that I've already pulled the trigger on this week, 2 of them, actually 2 more. I laid 10.5 with the Raiders against the Bengals because I think Cincinnati really is that bad. And I love the over in Houston, Baltimore. It just stuck out like a sore thumb to me. I got it at 49.5, and it's just gone up 2 points this morning, 51.5. I still like it at that number. That's just an obvious play. I don't think Houston's stopping Baltimore. I don't think Baltimore's stopping Houston. I know Baltimore's defense has played a little bit better the last few weeks. New England was a decent defensive performance. Cincinnati, I throw that one out because they've done nothing offensively for weeks. They had Ryan Finley at quarterback who wasn't ready to go. That's got extreme shootout written all over it. Texans and Ravens. Love the over in that one. So Houston, Baltimore over. Oakland, Carolina, and what was the other one? There was one more I was looking at. I can't remember now. But yeah, Carolina. Yeah, those three. Carolina, Oakland, and Houston, Baltimore over, Teddy, are my three main plays right now in the NFL for Sunday. What do you think of those three?
So I wouldn't try to talk you out of any of them. The Atlanta Panthers game is an interesting one because Atlanta to me showed buy last week. That wasn't blip, that was buy. And I adjusted my power because remember, the Falcons came into the season, they were supposed to be an 8.5 win team, slightly above average team. And every week they dropped in the power ratings. And by the time they went on bye, they were a bottom 5 team. And I made a big adjustment off that one win, because the defense showed up. The markets have made a huge adjustment off that one win, and it's too big. And I'm not going to get involved. I don't expect to get involved with the game. But I thought there was buy on Atlanta. But again, the markets, if you talk about an adjustment and a real adjustment, that's a significant adjustment off the one game for the Falcons. I'm with you. Let's see them do it twice before we get too excited about Atlanta. No argument with the Carolina piece of the equation in that. You were talking about the Raiders and then the Bengals. I have no problem fading Cincinnati. I'm not going to try to give you any rationale to bet on the Bengals. I'm not playing this game. I don't trust Oakland defensively, and I don't trust Oakland to win as double digit, to cover as double digit chalk. It's just not on my radar. And as for the Texans and the Ravens, of course, dude, you nailed it. And if you like the over, you're on in the chat right now and you want this over. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree earlier this morning, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more over money. There's still some 51s out there. If you like that over, find one right now and get to the window. I don't think this line comes back down unless there's weather conditions on Sunday, and early reports say not likely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. It'll be cold, but it'll be clear, and light wind in Baltimore is the last I looked at. I don't know if it's going to be Kansas City, LA Rams of that Monday Night Football game type of shootout, but to see this game end up, 35-31 would not be a shock to me whatsoever. I think these are two good offenses for sure in this one. And it's going to be a fun game to watch. And obviously Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson getting an absolute ton of credit and praise right now. And I think they'll both put on a show Sunday against these two defenses. All right, we're just about ready to wrap up the show. Before we go, I promised CFL picks for Sunday's division finals. One of the games I will be there in person, cheering on my Hamilton Tiger Cats as they host the Edmonton Eskimos, who cost me some money last week in beating Montreal. Give them credit for that. Montreal's defense isn't Hamilton's. I think our defense is going to be much better. Trevor Harris does play well against us historically. I get that, but I think we've got the defense to make his life a little tougher than Montreal did. Dane Evans has been awesome for us. There's nothing more to say about this guy and how he's played since Jeremiah Masoli got injured out for the season. People around this town thought our season was over. Great Cup contender we were. Oh, it's over now. Masoli injured. No, Dane Evans has been that good. We have Brandon Banks, Braylon Addison, tremendous receiving core. Luke Tasker, son of Steve Tasker, healthy again for us at the receiving core as well. I think our offense will be ready to go. I think we win the game. I bet Hamilton -4, not a homer bet. I believe in it. We're 9-0 straight up, 6-2 against the spread at home, 6-2-1 against the spread at home. I think we win this game. We haven't lost a home game this year, a great home field edge, of which I'm part of the reason why it's a great home field edge. And Hamilton, I think, gets the job done. Again, the number's gotten up there to 6, but if you can lay less than a touchdown, I would still look that way, and the over as well, because of previous two Hamilton-Edmonton games went over the total this year, and Trevor Harris, the number one QB for the Eskimos, didn't play in either game. It was Logan Kilgore at quarterback, Middle Tennessee quarterback way back when. So Definitely, I would look at some points being scored. And I like Winnipeg again. Winnipeg was easy peasy for me last week. They won outright as underdogs at Calgary 35-14. They're 7-1 against the spread as dogs this year. They played Saskatchewan tough in every game this year. I grabbed the 4s that were out there, even 3.5s now. It's still a good bet. Winnipeg to cover the number and maybe even win outright against Saskatchewan, getting 3.5. I said Hamilton, Winnipeg, Grey Cup before the season started. You can quote me on that. I posted it on Twitter. I said it on various shows and podcasts. Hamilton, Winnipeg, Grey Cup. I'm sticking with it. Hamilton, Winnipeg, Grey Cup. As both teams, I think, will advance this Sunday. All right. There you go. There's my CFL Division Finals breakdown. We got to wrap the show. Teddy, thanks for joining the show as always, as he does every morning on Betting with the Bag. You can follow Teddy at Teddy_covers. Teddy, have a great Thursday night. Have a great weekend, and good luck, my friend.
Hey, thanks, man. I'll take all the luck I can get. Good luck in the CFL tonight. And low baggers out in the chat, kick some ass tonight, dude. Make some money. Good luck. We'll talk tomorrow.
All right, great stuff with Teddy, and great stuff for everybody in the chat. Small Thrill, Oski, Wee Wee, you better believe it. Holy Mackinac, Tigers eat 'em raw. We're coming for the Edmonton Eskimos on Sunday in the East Final. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Great show. Good luck this Thursday night with all of your wagers. Jimmy will be back at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time to host the Late Show. Good luck, everybody watching in the chat. And as always, leche and los bookmakers.